If that cleaning cart squeaked one more time, Loretta knew it would be the end. It wasn't just the fear of losing her minimum wage job that paid the rent for her damp tenement apartment in the Ironworks district. It was the icy dread that Mr. Russo would make good on his promise from last week. One more mistake, Loretta, and I'll call Child Protective Services to take that boy and kick you to the curb. Cold sweat trickled down Loretta's back, dampening the scratchy gray synthetic uniform. She stopped in the middle of the executive suite hallway, her heart pounding so hard against her ribs it felt like a trapped bird trying to break free from its cage. The executive floor at Sterling Holdings didn't smell of work. It smelled of money, central air conditioning, and a silence so expensive that her ragged breathing sounded like a scream. "Mom!" The whisper came from inside the plastic cart, muffled beneath a mountain of grimy floor rags and disinfectant bottles. Loretta bent down abruptly, pretending to arrange the products, but her eyes scanned the empty hallway like a radar. "Shh! For heaven's sake, Toby, shh!" she hissed, her lips brushing the edge of the cart. "Mr. Russo is patrolling the floor below. If he comes up, if he hears you—" "But it hurts, Mom." Toby's little voice trembled, laden with that brutal honesty of children. "My stomach hurts from emptiness." Loretta closed her eyes for a second, feeling a physical pang in her chest. The pain of her son's hunger was worse than any beating life had ever given her, and life had certainly dealt her many blows. Today, October 18th, Toby was turning 6. 6 years of struggle, of gummy smiles, and of no's. No toys, no party, no father. And today, the final cruelty, no cake and no food. The daycare was closed due to lack of funds, the neighbor was sick, and Loretta had to commit the madness of smuggling her own son into the city's most luxurious building so as not to leave him alone and hungry at home. "I know, my love. I know," she whispered, her voice choked. "Mommy brought a little bread roll. It's in my bag, over in the pantry. We just need to clean the window in the sad man's office, and then we'll run over there. Can you hold on?" "For me, I can." A short pause. "Is the sad man there?" "He is. He always is. Now freeze like a deer in headlights." Loretta stood up. Her hands trembled as she picked up the window cleaner spray bottle. She looked at the double frosted glass door in front of her. The CEO's office. Julian Sterling's sanctuary. The office grapevine whispered that he was a monster, a recluse, a man who hadn't smiled in years. Loretta only knew that he owned everything, and if he saw her with a child there, her world would end. But fate is treacherous. As Loretta sprayed the blue liquid on the glass, trying to be invisible, the executive suite hallway echoed with the heavy sound of footsteps. A man's footsteps, footsteps of authority. Loretta froze. Through the glass's reflection, she saw the corpulent silhouette of Mr. Russo turning the corner of the executive suite hallway. He was checking the rooms, clipboard in hand, his face grim, like someone looking for a mistake to justify his own salary. Panic was absolute. If Russo got close to the cart, he would hear Toby's breathing. He would see the strange bulge beneath the cloths. In an act of blind desperation, Loretta saw that the CEO's office door was not locked. There was a gap, a forbidden gap. She pushed the cart into the shadow of a pillar, out of Mr. Russo's immediate sight, and rushed to clean the glass with manic energy, trying to make work noise to cover any sound Toby might make. Mr. Russo walked past. He looked at Loretta. His gaze was that of a predator analyzing weak prey. "The glass needs to be invisible, Loretta," he grumbled without stopping. "If I see a fingerprint, you'll sign your termination papers before lunch." "Yes, sir." "It will be perfect, sir," Loretta replied, her voice fading in her dry throat. Mr. Russo turned the next corner and disappeared. Loretta released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, leaning her forehead against the cold glass. Her legs were trembling so much she thought she would collapse. It was in that moment of weakness that she let her guard down. She did not see when Toby's little hand pushed aside the cloths from the cart. She did not see when he, drawn by something his little nose caught in the air, emerged from his hiding spot. Inside the CEO's office, the air was even colder. Julian Sterling was seated at the head of the conference table that could seat 20 people, but which now seemed like a desert of polished mahogany. The room was a glass mausoleum with a view of the grey city outside. Rain beat against the panoramic windows, creating a melancholic rhythm that perfectly matched Julian Sterling's soul. He stared at the centre of the table. There, solitary and almost offensive in its simplicity, was a small chocolate cake. The frosting was dark, glossy, and on top, a single blue candle shaped like the number 6 burned, fighting against the powerful air conditioning. The flame flickered, casting long shadows on Julian Sterling's face. He did not move. His right hand was clenched on the table, his knuckles white. In his left hand, he held an untouched glass of whiskey. The ice had long since melted. 6 years, he whispered, his hoarse voice scratching the room's silence. You would be 10 today, son. But in my mind, you stopped at 6. You will always be 6. Julian closed his eyes, and the image came sharp as a 4K movie. Arthur's smile, the way he ran with open arms, and then the sound of tires screeching, metal twisting, Evelyn's scream, and the silence. The silence that had lasted 4 years. The silence that had transformed him into this ghost in an Italian suit who commanded an empire but could not command his own will to live. He should blow out the candle. It was the ritual. Blow out the candle, ask for forgiveness for having survived, and throw the cake in the trash, because he did not deserve to taste life's sweetness. But before he could move, a different sound broke the sanctity of the moment. It wasn't the wind, nor the rain. It was the soft sound of a heavy door being pushed open by small hands. Julian opened his eyes slowly, annoyed. He had given explicit orders. No one was to enter. Not the secretary, not the board chairman, no one. I said I didn't want to be disturbed, he growled without turning around. No one replied, but there was a sound of old sneakers shuffling on the Persian rug, and a breath. A short, quick breath. Julian slowly turned his leather swivel chair, ready to fire whoever the idiot was who dared to invade his morning. When he faced the door, the dismissal died in his throat. The world stopped. The whiskey almost fell from his hand. There, standing 10 feet from him, was a boy. A thin boy with scraped knees, wearing a faded superhero t-shirt and shorts that looked hand-cut from old pants. His brown hair was disheveled, and there was a smudge of grease or dust on his left cheek. But it wasn't the poverty of his clothes that paralyzed Julian. It was his eyes, large, brown, curious, and frighteningly innocent eyes. Eyes that Julian knew. They were Arthur's eyes. No, they weren't. Arthur was dead, but the expression, that mix of fear and fascination, it was the same. Toby was mesmerized. He had escaped from the cart because the smell of chocolate had been stronger than his fear of Mr. Russo. For a child who had only eaten rice the day before, that smell was an irresistible magnet. He looked at the man in the suit, who looked like a sad statue. Then he looked at the cake. The number 6 candle glowed like a guiding star. Julian couldn't breathe. The air seemed to have vanished from the room. Was it a hallucination? Had stress finally broken his mind? Who are you?" Julian asked, his voice trembling, unrecognizable. Toby stepped forward. He knew he shouldn't be there. His mother had said it was dangerous, but the hunger hurt so much, and that candle was so beautiful. "Hi," Toby said. His voice echoed in the enormous room. "I'm Toby." Julian continued staring. Toby looked at the candle again, and then at Julian. He noticed the sadness in the man's eyes. Children recognize sadness better than adults. Toby saw that the rich man was as empty as his own stomach. "Mr. Toby began, twisting the hem of his t-shirt with his dirty hands. "Can I ask a question? But you won't get angry?" Julian shook his head minimally, unable to form words. Toby pointed his little finger at the cake. "Can I have lunch with you? It's just that today is my 6th birthday too, just like the number on your candle." The silence that followed was deafening. Julian felt as if he had been shot in the chest, but without the bullet. The impact was purely emotional. 6 years old. Today. The coincidence was too striking to ignore. The universe was playing a cruel trick or giving a divine sign. 6 years old, Julian repeated, as if the words were foreign. "Yeah." Toby agreed, giving a shy smile that revealed a missing baby tooth. "My mom said heaven didn't have money for a cake today. She said God was busy with other things, but your cake is pretty. It smells like a hug." Julian felt tears welling up, burning, urgent. He hadn't cried in front of anyone in 4 years, but that boy, God was busy. The simple phrase dismantled the armor of cynicism Julian had built. He stood up from the chair. His legs felt like lead. He wanted to get closer. He wanted to touch the boy's shoulder to see if he was real, if he wasn't a ghost of Arthur coming to take him away. "Are you hungry, Toby?" Julian asked, his voice choked. "Very. My stomach is growling like a lion." Julian walked around the table. He was going to invite the boy to sit down. He was going to give him the entire cake. He was going to do anything to keep that light burning in the dark room of his life for 1 more minute. But the room's door opened again. This time it wasn't gently. It was with a bang of arrogant authority. Constance Sterling entered like a hurricane of expensive perfume and malice. She wore a blood-red pantsuit, heavy gold jewelry, and carried a leather briefcase. She didn't even look inside before she started speaking, her shrill voice cutting through the magical moment like a dull knife. "Julian, I need your signature on the merger documents now. I'm not going to wait for you to finish this ridiculous little mourning ritual that has already lasted." Constance stopped. She saw Toby. The scene froze. The millionaire CEO, with tears in his eyes, was reaching out to a dirty street boy in the middle of his immaculate office. Constance's face contorted, first in confusion, then in recognition of the poverty, and finally in absolute disgust. "What is this?" Her scream made Toby jump and recoil, bumping into the glass table. "How did they let this animal in here? Security!" Toby's sudden movement made the cake tray slide on the polished glass. "Watch out!" Julian yelled, lunging forward. Too late. The tray tipped over. The chocolate cake, the sacred symbol of the day, fell. It landed with a damp thud on the beige Persian rug. The candle went out, crushed. Toby looked at the destroyed cake on the floor, and his eyes instantly filled with tears, not from fear, but from loss. The cake. The only cake. "No!" Toby sobbed. Constance Sterling advanced. She did not see a frightened child. She saw a blemish on her perfect company, an affront to her authority. She crossed the room in 3 long strides and grabbed Toby by his thin arm with her long, manicured nails. "You wretched brat!" She shook the boy. "Do you have any idea how much this carpet costs? You came in here to steal, didn't you? Where are your parents? Where is the security for this wretched building?" Toby cried out loudly, a sharp sound of pain and terror. "Mommy!" Outside, Loretta heard. Her son's scream pierced through the glass and struck her heart. Mr. Russo's fear vanished. The fear of being fired vanished. Only the instinct of a lioness remained. She dropped the squeegee to the floor, the metallic clang echoing in the hallway, and stormed into the room. The scene she witnessed would be her nightmare for years. The most powerful woman in the company, the terrible Constance Sterling, was hurting her son. "Let him go!" Loretta screamed, her voice hoarse, desperate. She ran, slipping on the rug, and threw herself to her knees between Constance and Toby, hugging her son's legs. "For God's sake, ma'am, let him go. He's my son. He didn't mean any harm." Constance released Toby with a disgusted shove, wiping her hands on her own blazer as if she had touched toxic waste. "Ah, so the source of the filth has appeared." Constance looked at Loretta, kneeling on the floor, in her grey cleaning uniform. The contempt in that woman's gaze was so physical it felt like a slap. "You're the new cleaner, aren't you? The one HR hired out of pity." "Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, Loretta cried, her hands trembling as she checked if Toby was hurt. "I had no one to leave him with. Today is his birthday. It was a second of carelessness." "Carelessness?" Constance Sterling laughed, a dry, humourless sound. "This isn't carelessness. This is trespassing. This is loitering. You've turned my company's CEO's office into a tenement daycare. Look at this. Look at this cake on the floor." Loretta, at the peak of her humiliation, began to try to gather the pieces of cake with her bare hands. The chocolate frosting stained her calloused, bleach-stained fingers. "I'll clean it, Constance Sterling. I'll clean everything. It will be spotless. I'll pay for the cake. Deduct it from my pay. You can deduct everything. Just please don't fire us." Constance Sterling stepped forward. With the tip of her Italian leather boot, she stepped on Loretta's hand, which was on the floor, right on top of the cake pieces. Loretta let out a muffled cry, biting her lip until it bled so as not to scare Toby even more. "Mom!" Toby yelled, pushing Constance Sterling's leg with his weak little hands. Get off my mum, you ugly witch! Why, you little—" Constance Sterling raised her hand, her heavy rings glinting in the room's light. She was going to hit him. She was going to hit a 6-year-old child. "I'll teach you some respect." The hand came down, but it stopped in mid-air. A dull thud. Flesh against flesh. Bone against bone. Julian Sterling had crossed the room. He gripped Constance Sterling's wrist with a strength he didn't know he possessed. His eyes, once dead and sad, now burned with a cold, terrible fire. Julian Sterling began, his voice low, vibrating with a contained fury that was far more terrifying than Constance Sterling's screams. "If you lay a finger on this child, or on her, I will forget that you are the grandmother of my deceased son." Constance Sterling tried to pull her arm away, shocked. She looked at Julian Sterling and saw a stranger. The passive, depressed son-in-law she had manipulated for 4 years had vanished. "Let go of me, Julian Sterling. Have you gone mad? Are you going to defend these lowlifes? They dirtied your office. They ruined Arthur's ritual." "No, Constance." Julian Sterling released her arm with a shove that made her stumble backward. Arthur would have invited him to sit. "You are the one who defiles this room with your rotten bitterness." Julian Sterling turned around. He ignored the powerful and wealthy woman. He knelt on the floor, ruining the crease of his tailored trousers. He ignored the smashed cake. He looked at Loretta, who was trembling, cowering, holding her stomped hand. "Let me see," he said, extending his hand. Loretta recoiled, embarrassed. "There's no need, sir. I am dirty. I will make you dirty. Give me your hand." It was not a request. It was a gentle command. Loretta extended her trembling hand, dirty with chocolate and red from the stomp. Julian Sterling held that calloused hand with both of his soft, well-cared-for hands. "I'm sorry," he said, looking into her eyes. They were beautiful eyes, he noticed, suffering yet beautiful. "No one will ever hurt you two inside this building again." He released her hand and turned to Toby, who was quietly sobbing. "And you, champ?" Julian wiped a tear from the boy's face with his thumb. "The cake fell, didn't it?" Toby nodded sadly. "It fell." Julian smiled. A crooked, rusty but real smile. "Do you know what that means? It means we have an excuse to order a bigger one." "And pizza. Do you like pizza?" Toby's eyes widened. "Pizza? Really? Really? With lots of cheese?" Julian stood up, pulling Toby onto his lap without caring about the dirt on the boy's clothes. He helped Loretta stand up with his other hand. Constance watched everything, pale with hatred. "Julian, if you do this, if you sit down to eat with the cleaner and that kid, I will call a board meeting. I will say you are mentally unfit. I will take the company from you." Julian adjusted Toby on his lap. The boy hugged his neck, and the smell of a child, even sweaty, was the best perfume Julian had smelled in years. "Do it, Constance. Call the board. But do it from your office." He pointed to the open door. "Because if you don't leave here in 10 seconds, I'll be the one calling security, and I'll have them carry you out." Constance opened her mouth, closed it, and her face turned purple. She knew when she had lost a battle, but the war was far from over. "Enjoy your lunch with the rats, Julian." She spat the words. "But remember, I hold the poison." She stomped out, her heels clicking loudly, the sound echoing like gunshots in the hallway. The room fell silent again, but the atmosphere had changed. The chill was gone. Julian looked at Loretta. "What's your name?" "Loretta, sir." "Loretta." He tested the name on his tongue. It sounded good. "Loretta, starting today, you won't be cleaning windows anymore. You'll be taking care of me." "Because it seems I need saving just as much as you do." Loretta tried to answer, but emotion choked her throat. She just nodded. And Toby, in the lap of that gentle giant, leaned his head on his shoulder and sighed, feeling that for the first time in his life, his birthday had brought a real gift, a protector. Julian held the boy close to his chest and looked at the rain outside. For the first time in 4 years, the rain didn't seem sad. It felt like it was washing his soul, but he knew. Constance wouldn't give up. Lunch was saved, but the storm was just beginning. The rain outside had offered a momentary reprieve, but inside the CEO's office on the 40th floor of Sterling Holdings, the atmosphere was like a summer sun that hadn't shone on those tempered glass walls in a long time. The aseptic scent of expensive cleaning products, polishing wax and central air conditioning had completely vanished. The environment, once as cold as an operating room, was now permeated by an aroma that would make any dieting executive turn up their nose in disapproval, but which for little Toby was the absolute smell of paradise on earth. Melted cheese, cheap oregano, toasted crust and greasy pepperoni. 3 pizza boxes lay open, wide open on the solid mahogany table, a table that cost more than Loretta's entire home. The greasy boxes rested right next to million-dollar merger contracts and financial reports that Julian had unceremoniously pushed aside, as if they were unimportant drafts compared to the magnitude of that lunch. "Careful, champ. The cheese is stretching. You'll get it on your chin and shirt." Julian laughed. It was a sound that came out rusty at first, like an old hinge that hadn't opened in years. But it soon loosened, transforming into genuine laughter. He extended a white linen napkin, embroidered with the company's golden crest, to catch the elastic strand of mozzarella that hung from Toby's mouth and threatened to fall onto his lap. Toby laughed with his mouth full, his brown eyes sparkling with pure happiness, swinging his legs that did not reach the floor in the president's leather swivel chair. He held the slice of pizza with both small hands, biting into it with ravenous eagerness, as if it were an edible treasure that could vanish at any moment. "Uncle Julian, this is the best pizza in the whole world, I swear. Mom never buys this kind that stretches like this, right, Mom? Hers is from the bakery, and the cheese gets hard like plastic." Loretta, sitting at the edge of the table, ate slowly, her shoulders still tense and hunched. She couldn't relax. She glanced at the heavy wooden door every 30 seconds, her eyes sweeping the hallway like radar, expecting security, riot police, or Constance Sterling herself to burst in, tearing everything down with an arrest warrant. It felt like a dream, a dangerous, fragile dream on the verge of turning into a nightmare. She, the cleaner who counted change from bread to pay for the bus, was having lunch at the most powerful table in the building, being served by the owner of it all. "Oh, good, Toby, don't talk with your mouth full, my son. How many times have I told you? And don't call Mr. Sterling uncle," Loretta reprimanded softly, wiping the corner of her mouth with exaggerated care not to soil the fancy napkin. "Mind your manners. We're already bothering Mr. Sterling too much." Julian stopped chewing. He swallowed the slice of pizza and stared intently at Loretta. He'd taken off his $3,000 Italian tailored jacket and tossed it over the back of the chair, not caring if it wrinkled. His silk tie was loose, the collar of his white shirt open, revealing his neck. For the first time in 4 long, dark years, he looked like a 36-year-old man, alive, and not a 100-year-old carrying the weight of the world and guilt on his back. Let the boy be, Loretta. Let him be a child. And please, no doctor. In here, while we're eating pizza and getting crumbs all over the table, I'm just Julian, or Uncle Julian. He smiled at the boy, a smile that reached his eyes. "I like Uncle Julian. It sounds like family. It sounds like something I lost and found again." His gaze met hers. Loretta felt her face flush, a fierce blush rising up her neck. There was a kindness in those tired eyes that completely disarmed her, tearing down brick by brick the barriers she had built to survive in the concrete jungle. "Sir, you," she stammered, her voice failing, correcting herself mid-sentence. "You don't know what this means to him. Toby has never had a party. He's never had anyone to do those father-son things with him. His father left before he was born, when he found out about the pregnancy. He only knows the harshness of life, the absence, that there isn't any." Julian looked at Toby, who was now trying to balance a black olive on the tip of his nose, making faces at his reflection in the window pane. The resemblance to Arthur, his deceased son, still hurt. It throbbed deep in his soul like an old wound on a rainy day, but now it was a sweet ache. A longing that didn't tear at his flesh, but warmed him, like holding a hand near a bonfire on a cold winter night. Loretta." Julian's voice grew serious, lowering to a confidential whisper so the boy wouldn't hear. "What happened earlier today? Constance, she wasn't kidding. She's going to try to harm you. She is a woman who thrives on control. She hates everything she cannot manipulate, and she cannot control Toby's joy, nor your dignity. That offends her bitterness." Loretta lowered her head, stopping her meal. Fear returned to chill her stomach, taking away all the taste of the pizza. Reality came knocking. "I know, I'm not stupid. I should leave right now. If I quit now, maybe she'll leave me alone. I'll disappear, go back to cleaning in another neighborhood, far from here." "No," Julian said firmly, gently but decisively slapping his open hand on the table. He leaned towards her, invading her personal space. "Nobody's leaving. Nobody's running away. I already spoke with HR on the phone while the pizza was on its way. You've been promoted. I just signed the digital order." "It's already in the system." Loretta's eyes widened, her plastic fork frozen in mid-air, her mouth agape. "Promoted? But I only know how to clean, sir. I don't have an education. I didn't finish high school. I don't know how to use fancy computers." "You won't be cleaning the entire building anymore. Starting tomorrow, your official position is executive assistant. You'll manage my executive pantry, my personal schedule, and most importantly, you'll ensure this office doesn't turn into a tomb again." He stared at her deeply, with an intensity that made her heart race. "The salary is triple what you earn today, and Toby gets full health insurance with immediate coverage." Loretta covered her mouth with her calloused hands, stifling a loud sob. Tears came unbidden, hot, fast, and abundant. Health insurance. Toby had chronic asthma and bronchitis. She used to spend her nights waiting in line at the community health center, in the cold, praying for a doctor, praying for a free asthma inhaler at the community pharmacy. This wasn't just a job. It was her lifeline. It was the difference between her son's life and death during a crisis. I don't even know how to thank you. I'll work twice as hard. I'll make this floor shine. I'll even wash the ceiling if I have to. I don't want the floor shining, Loretta. I want loyalty. Because out there, he pointed to the glass door with his chin, his face hardening. There are a lot of people who want to see me fall. There are snakes in silk. I need someone who is genuine in here. Someone who doesn't wear a mask. Someone who looks at me as a person, not as a vault. Toby, realizing his mother was crying, jumped down from the chair and ran to hug her, his little pizza-greased hands dirtying her grey uniform. "Don't cry, Mom. Uncle Julian is nice. He gave us pizza. He's a friend. He won't be mad." Julian stood up and walked to the window to give them privacy, feeling a lump in his throat. The rain had completely stopped. A timid but persistent ray of sunlight pierced the leaden clouds over the city. He felt a dangerous hope blossoming in his chest. He knew he was buying into a nuclear war with Constance Sterling, the woman who held half of the company's shares. But looking at that mother and son embracing, he felt he finally had something worth fighting for, something worth living for. The days that followed were, for Loretta and Toby, a fairy tale in the concrete jungle. But for Julian, they were days of armed vigilance and silent tension. A week passed, a magical week. The routine in the CEO's office changed drastically, shocking the entire executive floor and fueling the gossip in the hallways. Where there was once dead silence, fear, and the smell of grief, now there was life. Toby's crude, colourful drawings were taped to Julian's state-of-the-art monitor, covering complex stock market spreadsheets. Julian, who used to eat lunch on whiskey and antidepressants locked in the dark, now ate the homemade packed lunch Loretta brought: rice, beans, chicken, and toasted cassava flour. Sitting on the white leather couch while explaining to Toby how an airplane worked or why the sky was blue, there was a moment on Thursday afternoon that sealed their fate. Toby was trying to tie the laces of the new sneakers Julian had given him as a gift. He got all tangled up, his tongue sticking out in effort, frustrated. Julian, who was signing papers, saw the scene. He put down his gold pen. He got off his chair. He knelt on the rug beside the boy. "That's not how you do it, champ. Look here. Make the bunny ear, pass the other ear through the whole day, and pull." Julian guided Toby's small hands with his large ones. The touch, the child's scent, the boy's concentrated breathing. Julian felt a solitary tear roll down. He quickly wiped it away before Toby could see. Loretta, who was serving water, paused. She saw the most powerful man she knew kneeling at her son's feet, teaching him how to live. Her heart overflowed. It wasn't gratitude. It was love. A love born in the midst of chaos. But peace is merely the interval between two wars. It was the following Tuesday, the fateful day. Toby had come home from private school, tuition and full uniform discreetly paid for by Julian, and was lying on the plush rug, drawing with crayons, while Loretta organized the legal bookshelf, carefully dusting each spine. Julian was at his desk, signing papers, but his attention was focused on a technician in blue overalls who was finishing installing a small device in the upper corner of the bookshelf, perfectly camouflaged among the thick books on criminal and civil law. "It's ready, mister." "Julian," the technician whispered, carefully descending the ladder. "High-resolution 4K camera, wide-angle lens with a high-sensitivity omnidirectional microphone. It records directly to the encrypted private cloud. No one from building security has access, nor IT, nor the front desk. Only you, through the app on your cell phone." "Excellent," Julian replied quietly, without looking up from the papers, but his ears were attentive. "I want eyes on everything. I have a feeling that papers are disappearing from my desk. Industrial espionage is on the rise, and I don't trust anyone. Absolutely no one." The angle covers the entire room, your desk, and the executive pantry entrance, the technician assured, putting his tools back in the case. Julian nodded. He was paranoid about the competition, yes, but the real reason had a name, a last name, and a social security number: Constance Sterling. His mother-in-law had been strangely silent for the past week. No shouting, no intrusions, no threats to shut down the company or call lawyers, only icy stares and thin smiles, sharp as paper, in the hallways. And Julian knew, from years of painful experience living with her, that the silence of a snake in the grass is always the most dangerous moment. It's the moment she's coiling, tensing her muscles to go for the fatal jugular. Loretta approached with a fresh cup of coffee, pulling Julian from his dark thoughts. The scent of strong coffee filled his senses, bringing immediate homey comfort. "Black coffee, strong, just the way you like it," she said, smiling. Her new uniform, a discreet navy blue pantsuit that HR had provided, fit her well, elegantly shaping her figure. She looked like a different woman. More confident, her posture erect, her shiny black hair pulled back into an elegant bun. Her beauty, once hidden by fatigue and poverty, now blossomed. Julian took the cup, and their fingers brushed for a second longer than necessary. Her skin was warm. His was cold. A subtle but undeniable electric current passed between them. Loretta pulled her hand back quickly, blushing fiercely, her eyelashes lowering. Julian cleared his throat, trying to hide his growing interest, fighting against the grief that still told him he had no right to love. "Thank you, Loretta. Toby, is he enjoying his new school?" "He loves it. He says the teacher doesn't yell, and that there's a sand playground with toys that aren't broken." Loretta looked at her son drawing on the floor, her tongue peeking between her teeth in concentration. "You saved our lives, Julian. I'll never be able to repay what you're doing, not even if I live 1,000 years. "You already do," Julian said softly, his voice hoarse. "By bringing peace to this place, by bringing life. You brought color back to my black and white world." Outside in the hallway, the door was ajar by just an inch. A glacial blue eye, heavy with black mascara and distilled hatred, watched the domestic scene with disgust. Constance Sterling clutched the strap of her designer handbag so tightly that the leather creaked. She saw the shy smiles, she saw the affectionate glances exchanged, and, worst of all, she saw the drawing Toby was making on the floor. 3 stick figures. A tall man in a suit, a woman and a boy holding hands beneath a giant yellow sun. Family. Constance whispered to herself, the taste of bitter bile rising in her mouth, burning her throat. "He is replacing my daughter with this gutter trash. He is spitting on Evelyn and Arthur's graves. He wants to give my grandson's place to this bastard." Constance's pain was real, but it was twisted, sick, poisoned by elitism and possessiveness. To her, Julian was property of her daughter's memory. If he were happy with another, it would be an unforgivable betrayal. She looked at her own hand. On her ring finger, over a black lace glove, she wore a solitaire ring with a huge pointed diamond, an ancient cutting stone, a weapon in the form of jewelry. "Smile while you can, darling," Constance Sterling murmured, moving away from the door silently, her heels muffled by the thick carpet in the hallway. "Because your fairy tale will end before dinner, and it will have a horror ending." 2 days later, the day of the quarterly shareholder meeting, the most important day of the fiscal year. The atmosphere at the company was one of absolute tension. Foreign investors, regional directors from Japan and Europe, and the entire board would be present. Julian Sterling was focused, obsessively reviewing the numbers. He needed to be impeccable, to silence those who said he was emotionally unstable after his family's death. "Loretta!" he called through the intercom, his voice professional, tense. "I'm going down to greet the Japanese in the main lobby. Can you get the adjoining boardroom ready? Iced water, fresh coffee, the printed reports aligned at each seat. Of course, Julian. I'll take care of it. Everything will be perfect. Where's Toby? Today is a school field trip day. He went to the zoo with his class. He won't be back until late afternoon. Great. Less danger of him drawing moustaches on the Japanese investors. Julian laughed, but it was a nervous, short laugh. I'll be back in 20 minutes. Please keep an eye on my desk. I left the main drawer unlocked. The presentation flash drive is in there. My life is on that flash drive. Don't let anyone in. Consider it done. Nobody gets in here. I'm your bodyguard. Julian left, adjusting his tie in the elevator mirror. The floor became empty and silent. Most of the staff was downstairs in the auditorium preparing for the event. Loretta stayed in the executive pantry, washing the special gold-rimmed porcelain cups that were only used on such occasions. The sound of running water muffled the soft sound of the private elevator opening in the hallway. Constance Sterling entered the floor. She wasn't marching today. She glided like a shadow, like a spectre. She wore thin black leather gloves, claiming an allergy to the dry office air. But the purpose was to avoid fingerprints. She entered Julian's office. Her heart beat fast, not from fear, but from malicious excitement. She went straight to his desk. She slowly opened the main drawer. There, next to the flash drive, on top of a navy blue velvet folder, was the most sacred object in Julian's life. It wasn't money, nor jewelry bought at auction. It was the family medallion, a solid gold piece, antique, heavy, a grandfather's inheritance. Inside, there was the only remaining photo of Julian, Evelyn, and little Arthur smiling together on the beach, days before the fatal accident. Julian used to hold that locket in moments of crisis, squeezing it until his hand hurt. It was his amulet, his physical connection to the deceased. Constance picked up the locket. The cold gold felt heavy in her gloved hand. "You don't deserve this, Julian," she whispered to the empty room, dripping venom. "You handed our legacy over to the servants. You betrayed their memory. You will pay." She looked towards the executive pantry. She heard Loretta humming a lullaby softly while drying the dishes. That woman's innocence and happiness deeply irritated Constance. Constance walked silently to the executive pantry entrance. Loretta's bag, a simple, worn, cheap fabric bag with a half-stuck zipper, was hanging on the coat rack, out of sight from anyone at the sink. Constance Sterling opened her purse with the dexterity of someone who had rummaged through many others' belongings before. She reached her hand deep inside, groping between a bunch of keys and a package of crackers, and dropped the locket in, pushing it deep down. As she withdrew her hand, the enormous pointed diamond ring Constance Sterling wore, she never took it off, not even under a glove, caught on the delicate, soft clasp of the 18K gold locket. "Damn it!" she hissed. She pulled hard, impatiently. Scratch! A sharp metallic snap was heard, and the horrible sound of metal tearing metal. She managed to free her hand, but felt the vibration of the ring scratching the gold. She knew she had deeply scratched the sacred object. It didn't matter. Even better, it would look like the thief had been careless, brutal, and greedy when stealing it. Constance Sterling closed Loretta's purse. She took 2 steps back, took a deep breath to compose herself as an outraged victim, lightly ruffled her own hair to appear nervous, and then screamed, her voice choked with perfectly feigned tears. "My God, what are you doing, thief?" Loretta jumped at the sink. The fright was so great that she knocked over a Japanese porcelain cup. The piece shattered on the floor into 1,000 fragments, the sound of breaking glass echoing like a gunshot. She turned around, pale as paper, her heart in her mouth. "Constance Sterling? What?" "I was washing the dishes." Constance Sterling was already at the executive pantry door, blocking the exit with her body, her eyes glaring at Loretta. "Don't play innocent. I saw you running out of his office. I saw you rummaging in the drawer. I saw it with my own eyes." "I didn't go in there, Ma'am. Julian Sterling asked me to stay here, I swear. I never—" "Julian!" Constance scoffed, a harsh, loud laugh. "Are you already calling the boss by his first name? Familiarity certainly breeds boldness. Let's see what you have to say when security arrives." Constance picked up the wall phone in the executive pantry and dialed the general emergency code. "Security? This is Constance Sterling. Send a team to the CEO's office immediately. We have a theft in progress. And call Julian Sterling. Get him out of his meeting. It's urgent. Code red." Loretta was trembling so much that she had to lean on the sink to avoid falling onto the sharp porcelain shards. She looked at her innocent purse, hanging and swaying slightly on the hook, unaware that inside it lay her social death sentence. 15 minutes later, the CEO's office looked like a medieval Inquisition court. Julian burst in, out of breath, a cold sweat breaking out, followed by 3 impeccable Japanese directors, 2 German investors, and the head of security, a huge, intimidating ex-military man. Julian saw the scene and felt his blood run cold. Loretta was huddled in a corner, crying silently, hugging her own arms as if she were cold. Constance Sterling stood beside Julian's desk, the drawer wide open like an empty mouth. "What is going on here? I have investors waiting in the lobby. This is unacceptable," Julian exploded, the day's tension overflowing. He looked at the Japanese directors and apologized with a nod, humiliated by the domestic commotion. "The investors need to know what kind of company you run, Julian," Constance Sterling said, her voice calm, lethal, and laden with theatrical sadness. "The drawer is open. Arthur's locket is gone." Julian stopped. The world spun in slow motion. The sound of the rain outside faded. The hum of the air conditioning disappeared. Only the pounding of his heart in his ears remained. "What?" He rushed to the desk, nearly stumbling. He looked at the drawer. Empty. The blue velvet, where the locket rested, was bare. Only the flash drive was there. That locket was his life. He never took it out of there. It was the only thing he had taken from his son's room. It was the only thing he kissed every day. "I arrived and saw this woman leaving your office, running to the executive pantry, breathless." Constance pointed at Loretta with an accusing finger, her perfect nail pointing like a weapon. "When I asked what she had in her hand, she became nervous and dropped a cup. The shards are there to prove it. The nervousness of guilt." "Lies!" Loretta cried out, her voice broken by sobs, desperate. She took a step forward, but the security guard blocked her path. "Julian, I swear, I didn't leave the executive pantry. I swear on Toby's life. Don't believe her." Julian looked at Loretta. He wanted to believe. God, how he wanted to. He remembered the pizza, the smile, the drawing on the floor, the touch of their hands, but the cold, cruel logic of trauma began to invade his mind like a lethal virus. She was poor. The locket was worth a fortune on the black market. She had old debts. He had seen her file. He had given her the office password. And she was there, alone. And the shame of being robbed in front of international investors, the shame of having trusted a stranger and being betrayed. It burned his ego. "Search her bag," Julian said to Mr. Russo. His voice sounded strange, metallic, like ground glass. "Julian, no," Loretta pleaded, reaching out to him, her red eyes begging for mercy. "You know us, your Uncle Julian." The use of the term of endearment at that moment stung him like a stab in the back. It felt like cheap, emotional manipulation. It seemed she was using the boy's affection as a shield. "If you didn't take it, you have nothing to fear, dear," Constance Sterling intervened, crossing her arms triumphantly, positioning herself as the guardian of morality. "Search her, security. Now. In front of everyone. Let's end this charade." The security guard took Loretta's fabric purse. He turned it upside down over the polished 20-foot boardroom table. The contents spilled out, making a dismal sound. A bunch of keys with a cheap plastic keychain, an old lipstick almost used up, a peeling faux leather wallet, crumpled receipts, and an open package of cream-filled cookies with crumbs falling onto the noble mahogany, her poverty exposed on the millionaire's table, and then, finally, slowly sliding from the lining. Thud. With a dull, heavy and unmistakable thud of solid gold, the locket fell. The silence in the room was absolute. A deathly silence. Even the Japanese investors held their breath. Loretta stopped crying. She looked at the object shining on the table among the cookie crumbs as if it were a venomous snake ready to strike. She didn't understand. Her world collapsed. How did that get there? "No," she whispered, trembling from head to toe. "That's not mine. I never touched it." Julian looked at the locket. Then he looked at Loretta. The expression on his face changed. It was terrible to witness. The kindness, Uncle Julian, the man who laughed with cheese on his chin, the man who taught Toby how to tie his sneakers. All of it died in that instant. It was murdered by the evidence. In its place, the cold CEO resurfaced, the ice monster who lost his family in an accident and learned the hard way that the world is a cruel place where happiness is always, always a trap for fools. The pain of betrayal was worse than the pain of theft. He had opened the door to his sanctuary. He had let them into his soul, into the sacred space of his son, and she had used that to steal his physical memory. "Julian!" Loretta stepped forward. "Someone put that there. I didn't. Don't say my name." Julian's scream was so loud, so visceral, that the room's windows vibrated. It was the roar of a wounded animal. The directors recoiled, startled by the violence of his pain. He picked up the locket from the table, squeezing it in his hand until the edges cut into the skin of his palm. "I gave you a job. I gave you dignity. I treated your son like—" His voice broke, choked with fury and suppressed tears. "And you steal the only thing I had left of him, his picture, for what? To sell it at a pawn shop for pennies? To buy drugs? To buy clothes? Julian, it's a setup!" Loretta sobbed, falling to her knees on the carpet, clutching the hem of his pants. "Look at me. I'm Loretta. I made coffee for you today." Julian pulled his leg away in disgust, as if she were contagious. "I am looking," Julian said, and his eyes were dead, cold as polar ice, soulless. "And I am seeing a thief. A cheap actress who used an orphan child to gain my trust and steal from me. Constance was right all along. I was a needy fool." Constance, in the corner, suppressed a victorious smile. She put on a rehearsed look of sorrow and touched his arm maternally. "I am so sorry, Julian. I warned you. These people, they have a bad nature. Hunger makes them bite the hand that feeds them. It's instinct." Julian turned his back on Loretta. He could no longer look at her without feeling like he would vomit from so much pain. His heart was closing again, this time with steel padlocks that would never be opened again. "Get her out of here!" he ordered the security guard, low, almost a whisper, but with lethal authority. "Sir, should we call the police?" the security guard asked, grabbing his radio. Loretta froze. The world stopped. The police? Toby. If she were arrested, Toby would go to a government shelter. Toby would be all alone in the world with no one. "No!" she cried, crawling. "Not the police! For heaven's sake, I'll do anything. Don't arrest me. My son is waiting for me." Julian hesitated for a second. The image of Toby smiling with the pizza came to his mind, sharp as a blade. He squeezed his eyes shut, feeling a treacherous tear escape. "No!" Julian said sharply. "No police. I don't want a scandal with the investors here. Just get her out of here. Kick her to the curb, and if I see her face or that boy's face in front of me again, then I will call the police and have her arrested, soul and all." "Julian, please!" Loretta screamed as the security guard lifted her by the arm with brutality, almost dislocating her shoulder. "It's a lie. Listen to your heart. You know who I am." My heart died 4 years ago, Julian replied without turning, staring at the rain outside the window. And you just proved I was an idiot for trying to resurrect it. Get out of here, Loretta. Go to hell. The security guard dragged Loretta out. She tried to hold on to the doorframe, her nails scratching the wood, but it was useless. Her screams of, "I'm innocent," echoed down the hallway, growing fainter, desperate, until the elevator door closed with a soft, indifferent ding, cutting off the sound of despair. The room fell silent again, heavy, suffocating, awkward. The investors exchanged uncomfortable glances. Constance Sterling approached Julian. "You did the right thing, my dear. It hurts, I know, but it's better to nip it in the bud. Now you see who is truly on your side, who never abandoned you, your real family." Julian pulled away from her touch abruptly, as if she burned him. He went to the window, holding the locket against his chest, gasping, trembling. He looked at the city outside. The rain had started falling again, heavy, furious, washing over the city, mirroring the chaos within him. He felt stupid, used, dirty. The small flame of happiness that had ignited in his life had been extinguished with a bucket of icy, sewage-filled water. He opened his trembling hand and looked at the locket, seeking comfort in his son Arthur's face in the photo. But for the first time, under the grey light of the storm, he noticed something different. A deep scratch on the gold back near the clasp. A fresh, bright scratch on the old gold, tearing the metal violently. He ran his finger over the scratch. It was deep, made by something very hard and sharp, brute force. A strange sensation ran through him, a shiver down his spine. Loretta had short nails, bitten down to the quick from anxiety. She didn't wear jewelry. What in her soft fabric bag could have made such a deep and precise scratch on solid gold? But anger and pain were greater than curiosity at that moment. Logic was drowned in resentment. He closed his hand again, hiding the scratch and the doubt within his fist. "It's over, Constance," he said, his voice empty, hollow. "Let's go to the meeting." What about the presentation?" Constance asked solicitously, her voice gentle, hiding her triumph. "To hell with the presentation. Let's just continue, as we always have. Survive." Julian left the office, marching like a wounded soldier heading to slaughter, hardened. Constance stayed behind for a second. She looked at the spot where Loretta's purse had been minutes before. She smiled at her own reflection in the dark window glass, adjusting the diamond ring that had caused the scratch. "Checkmate, Cinderella story," she whispered, triumphant. But Constance made a mistake, a classic error of an arrogant villain who underestimates technology and others' paranoia. High on the bookshelf, camouflaged among the law books, a small red light blinked, imperceptible in the dark of the shelf. The lens of the new camera, the one Julian had ordered installed and that Constance was completely unaware of, had seen everything. The theft, the planting, the scratch made by the ring, the malicious smile. The truth was recorded in the cloud, floating in digital space, waiting to be downloaded. But Julian, blinded by grief, did not know that the proof of Loretta's innocence was just a click away in his pocket. Downstairs, on the wet sidewalk, the glass lobby door opened, and Loretta was thrown out by the security guard. She tripped over her own feet and fell to her knees on the cold, rough pavement. The icy rain soaked her new uniform in seconds, sticking the fabric to her skin, mixing with her warm tears. People hurried past with their umbrellas and veered away, ignoring the fallen woman, judging her as just another crazy person or beggar. She cried, howling at the grey sky, but not for the lost job, nor for the hunger that would once again haunt her refrigerator. She cried because she had lost the only hope of love and protection she had had in years. "Toby," she sobbed, rainwater entering her mouth. "What am I going to tell Toby? He loved Uncle Julian. He thought he had gained a father." Loretta curled up in the rain, hugging her own body, alone against the world again. while high above, on the 40th floor, the lie reigned supreme, seated at the head of the table, drinking champagne with the investors. The rain falling on the city that night was not just water. It felt like molten lead, heavy and cold, mercilessly punishing the corrugated zinc roofs of the ironworks district. In the two-room tenement apartment where Loretta lived, the sound of the storm was deafening, drowning out even her own thoughts. Old leaks had reopened wounds in the ceiling, and cracked plastic buckets scattered across the cement floor formed a sad, off-key orchestra of drip, drip, drip that marked the rhythm of the misery that had returned with full force. Loretta was sitting on the edge of the narrow bed she shared with Toby. She had not taken off her wet uniform, nor dried her hair. The blue synthetic fabric, now stained with gutter mud and clinging to her body, chilled her skin. She was paralyzed, staring into space as the cold penetrated her bones. But the cold outside was nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the absolute ice she felt in her chest. Toby slept restlessly beside her, wrapped in a thin blanket that smelled of mildew and dampness. His breathing was a sharp wheeze, the whistle of an old boiling kettle, the asthma, the damned asthma that always worsened with dampness and emotional stress. "Mom," Toby mumbled in his sleep, turning over and kicking the blanket. "Uncle Julian, pizza." The name was like a knife twisting in Loretta's gut. She covered her mouth with both hands to keep from screaming, choking back a sob that would tear her throat. How would she explain? How would she tell a 6-year-old child that Uncle Julian, the hero who gave him new sneakers, who taught him to tie his shoelaces, who promised protection, now thought they were dirty, unworthy thieves? How to explain that the glass castle had crumbled because a rich woman decided to play God with their lives? Loretta stood up, her legs heavy as anchors. She walked to the small, rusty refrigerator in the corner of the makeshift kitchen. She opened the door. The interior light flickered and burned out, leaving everything in darkness, but she didn't need light to know the inventory of her misfortune. A half-empty bottle of water and a dried-up lemon forgotten in the door. The stock-up she would have done with the advance on her new salary never happened. The food stamp card never arrived. She closed the refrigerator and leaned her forehead against the cold, vibrating metal. "God, why did you give me hope only to take everything away later?" she whispered, her voice hoarse, arguing with the heavens. "It would have been better to leave us in the mud from the start. It would have hurt less. The fall was too great." The next morning brought a pale, heatless sun, illuminating Loretta's shame. She couldn't afford to cry. Toby needed to eat. The medicine had run out, the rent was 2 months overdue, and the owner of the tenement apartment, Mr. Skaggs, was not known for his patience or charity. Loretta took off her dirty uniform and put on her best regular clothes, faded jeans and a white t-shirt she had hand-washed overnight and dried behind the refrigerator. She left early. She left Toby with her neighbor, Mrs. Patty, a kind woman who also barely had enough to eat, promising to pay her back with a cleaning favor later. "I'll be back with money, son." "I promise," she said, kissing the boy's feverish forehead. He was hot, too hot. "Will you bring Uncle Julian too?" Toby asked, his eyes shining with fever and innocence, not understanding that Uncle was now the enemy. Loretta left without answering, swallowing the dry sob that scratched like sand. She went to Popovich's Deli and Bakery in the neighborhood center, where she knew they urgently needed a counter-clerk. The owner, Mr. Popovich, knew her by sight and always praised her manners. "Mr. Popovich, good morning. I saw the sign. I need to work. I'll do anything. Cleaning, counter, oven, carrying flour sacks." The man, usually friendly and cheerful, frowned when he saw her. He wiped his hands on his flour-stained apron and looked around nervously as if afraid of being seen talking to a criminal. "Loretta, you'd better leave." "But why? I'm a hard worker, you know that. I cleaned the Sterling Holdings building. I have references." "That's precisely why." Mr. Popovich lowered his voice, embarrassed, moving closer to the counter. The security manager from there, a Mr. Russo, came by early with a picture of you. He left a warning with all the businesses in the neighborhood. He said you were caught stealing the owner's gold jewelry. He said anyone who hires you will have trouble with the police and Constance Sterling's lawyers. He said they will shut down the establishment for complicity. The ground vanished beneath Loretta's feet. The world spun. That's a lie, Mr. Popovich. I didn't steal anything. It was a set-up by his mother-in-law. Loretta, please. The man backed away, raising his hands. Constance Sterling owns half this street. The properties belong to her. If she decides not to renew my lease, I'll go bankrupt. I have a family, Loretta. I can't get involved. Please leave before someone sees and takes a picture. Loretta was kicked out, again and again. At every door she knocked on, at the clothing store, the grocery store, even the third-party cleaning company. Constance Sterling's shadow had already arrived. The blacklist, the villainess, had not just fired Loretta, she had made sure to implement a scorched earth policy to destroy her future. Constance Sterling wanted to be absolutely certain that Loretta would crawl back to the gutter from which she believed Loretta had come. At noon, Loretta was sitting on a broken park bench, her stomach rumbling with hunger and her feet covered in blisters. She looked at the mirrored Sterling Holdings building, which rose on the city's skyline like an unattainable ivory tower. Up there, in the air conditioning, they remained rich, powerful and untouchable. And down here, she didn't have $20 to buy a generic asthma inhaler for her son Toby, who was wheezing at home. They won, Loretta whispered to the pigeons pecking crumbs on the ground. Money always wins. The truth is just a detail. While Loretta wallowed in defeat in the gutter on the 40th floor, the air was so thick it was unbreathable. Julian had not gone home. He had spent the night in the office, locked in like a caged animal. His tie lay discarded on the floor. His $600 shirt was crumpled, open at the chest, and stained with whiskey. His unshaven beard darkened his face, giving him the look of a crazed castaway. The office was in twilight. The automatic blackout blinds were drawn, blocking out the day. The only light came from a desk lamp. Julian sat in his leather chair, obsessively spinning the gold medallion between his fingers. The same medallion, the object of the crime, the sacred relic. He took a swig of whiskey straight from the bottle, spun the medallion, took another swig, spun it again. His mind was a mess. The rage was still there, hot and throbbing, screaming that he had been a fool betrayed by a pair of beautiful eyes. But there was another voice, a small, irritating voice, the voice of the brilliant lawyer he once was, whispering in the back of his logical brain. Why would she leave it in a hanging purse? The voice asked, relentless. Why didn't she hide it in her bra? Why didn't she throw it in the trash when she saw Constance Sterling coming in? Professional thieves don't walk around with the spoils of their theft hanging in the executive pantry waiting to be caught. That's too stupid. Julian Sterling snorted, throwing the empty bottle against the wall. The glass shattered, but he didn't even flinch at the sound. Because she's stupid, he yelled at the empty room, trying to convince himself. Because she's an amateur. She thought I was blind with love. She let her guard down. He squeezed the locket tightly, so tightly that the metal edge cut the skin of his hand. The physical pain calmed him for a second. He opened his hand and looked at the gold under the dim light of the bedside lamp. His eyes, red from alcohol and insomnia, focused on the back of the locket. The scratch, that damned deep scratch, silvery under the yellow gold that tore the smooth surface like a scar. Julian ran his thumbnail over the groove. It was deep. There was a raised metal burr. Whoever did that used brute force and a material infinitely harder than 18K gold, diamond, tempered steel, glass. Julian closed his eyes and tried to visualize Loretta's hands, rough hands, calloused from bleach and broom handles, short nails almost to the quick, bitten from anxiety. She didn't wear rings. She didn't even have a wedding band because her husband died, and she sold the band to pay for the indigent's burial. He knew that. He read her social file in HR when he hired her. "A fingernail doesn't scratch gold," Julian murmured, logic beginning to overcome his anger. "A fingernail breaks, skin tears. Gold is metal." He took a metal key from the drawer and tried to scratch the base of his solid bronze lamp. It made a light, superficial scratch. To make a groove that size on the medallion, it would require a sharp, hard point like stone. Constance's image came to his mind. Constance entering the room, Constance screaming, Constance with the black leather gloves. Gloves! Julian frowned. Constance never wore gloves inside the office. She liked to display her hands full of rings to show power. But yesterday she was wearing gloves the entire time, and underneath the glove. He remembered the ring, the diamond solitaire. An enormous antique stone, cut in a marquise point, sharp as a dagger, which she had inherited from her grandmother. A diamond she swore she would never take off her finger, not even to sleep, not even to bathe, because it brought good luck. If she were wearing the spiked ring under the thin leather glove and forced her hand into a tight purse, and the ring snagged on the soft gold of the clasp, Julian felt a shiver run down his spine. The alcohol evaporated from his blood instantly, replaced by pure adrenaline. "It can't be," he said, slowly standing up. The chair toppled backward with the movement. "She's a witch, but steal her own dead grandson's locket to frame a cleaner? That's sick. That's sociopathy." But the seed of doubt had grown into a deeply rooted tree, and Julian Sterling was not a man who relied on guesswork. He lived by proof. He looked at the dark room. His eyes scanned the surroundings, searching for an answer. His gaze stopped at the bookshelf. In the darkness of the room, a tiny red dot blinked at the top of the bookshelf, reflecting in the glass of the empty picture frame. The camera. He had forgotten. With the chaos of the meeting, the public humiliation, the Japanese, Loretta's dramatic expulsion, he had completely forgotten that just 2 days earlier he himself had ordered the silent witness installed due to paranoia about espionage. Julian ran to the desk. His hands trembled as he rummaged through the mess of papers, searching for his cell phone. He found it. He unlocked the screen with his sweaty thumb. The security application was there. Red icon. Security Cloud. He clicked it. The application requested the biometric password. Julian placed his finger. His heart pounded in his throat. Access granted. The screen showed a live image of the room. He saw himself on the cell phone screen, a disheveled, broken man, holding the cell phone as if it were a pinless grenade about to explode. He clicked playback. He selected yesterday's date, time, 1:45 p.m., the time he had gone down to the lobby. The video loaded. The progress bar spun. The 4K quality was unforgiving. Julian held his breath. On the screen, the room was empty. Then the door opened. Constance Sterling entered. She did not look like the grieving, worried mother-in-law he knew. She looked like a cheap movie spy. She glanced around. She tiptoed, agile for her age. Julian zoomed in on the image with his fingers. He saw her face. She was smiling, a wicked, excited smirk, the smile of someone about to commit a crime and enjoying it. He saw her open his drawer. He saw her gloved hand take the sacred locket. "You wretched woman," Julian whispered, his voice failing. "You took it." He continued watching. He saw Constance walk to the entrance of the executive pantry. The camera captured the perfect angle from above. He saw her hand dip into Loretta's fabric bag. And then he saw the exact moment of truth. Constance Sterling pushed her hand away. As she pulled it back, her purse swung violently. Constance Sterling grimaced in pain or irritation. She looked at her own gloved hand. She rubbed her ring finger over the leather. The snag. Her ring had caught. Then came the Oscar-worthy performance. Constance Sterling messed up her hair. She took a deep breath and began to scream silently towards the hallway. The microphone audio picked up muffled shouts of "Thief!" Julian Sterling paused the video. At the exact moment Constance Sterling smiled at her reflection in the window, seconds after Loretta had been dragged out. The zoom on her face showed the pure satisfaction of a demon who had just claimed a soul. Julian Sterling carefully placed his cell phone on the table as if it were radioactive. He slowly sat down on the couch. He did not scream. He did not cry. He felt something far worse, something definitive. He felt absolute ice take hold of his veins. All the sadness, all the paralyzing 4-year depression transformed in that second into nuclear fuel. He had kicked out the only woman who made him smile. He had humiliated the boy who called him father. He had thrown innocence to the curb to starve while protecting the true snake in his bosom. "I am going to destroy you, Constance Sterling," Julian Sterling said into the darkness. His voice was low, monotonous, terrible. "I will take every penny, every drop of prestige, every ounce of pride you possess. You will wish you had died in that accident with them, and I will watch from the sidelines." He stood up. He went to the private bathroom in the office. He washed his face with ice-cold water. He shaved with a steady hand, the blade gliding over his skin without a tremor. He combed his hair. He returned to the office. He put on a clean black suit he kept in the emergency closet. He tightened his tie knot as if preparing a noose for someone. He grabbed his cell phone. He saved the video to 3 different cloud services. He sent a copy to his encrypted personal email and to his attorney. Then he pressed the intercom button. "Glenda?" he called to the secretary on the floor below. "Yes, Julian. Thank goodness. Are you all right?" The secretary's voice was trembling. "I'm perfectly fine, Glenda. Summon the head of security, Mr. Russo. I want him in my office in 5 minutes. And call my personal attorney, Mr. Keaton. Tell him to bring the documents for the full transfer of shares." "Transfer of shares, sir? Are you going to sell the company? Are you leaving?" "No, Glenda." Julian looked at the locket in his hand and placed it in his pocket, close to his heart. "I'm going to throw a party, and Constance Sterling will be the guest of honor." Half an hour later, the head of security, Mr. Russo, the same large man who had dragged Loretta, entered the office, sweating profusely, holding his cap in his hands. He knew Julian was unstable. "Yes, doctor, you called for me?" "Sit down, Mr. Russo." Julian was sitting in his chair, twirling a gold pen. He seemed too calm. "I have a special task for you. A task that will determine if you remain employed, go to jail, or get promoted." Mr. Russo swallowed hard. "Jail, sir. I just did what Constance Sterling told me to. She said it was an open and shut case. I know, Mr. Russo. I know everything." Julian smiled, a shark smile, sensing blood. "You obey whoever pays your salary, and I'm the one who pays." Julian pushed a piece of paper with an address across the table. "I want you to locate Loretta and the boy. Now. Use your contacts, use the street cameras, use hell if you have to. Find out where they are." I know where they live, sir. In the Ironworks district." "Excellent." Julian opened the drawer and pulled out a wad of cash and a white box with a high-end dry cleaner's logo. "You're going there now. You'll take medicine, food, and deliver this box. Inside is a new uniform. Clean." Mr. Russo took the box, confused. "And Mr. Russo." Julian lowered his tone, his eyes piercing the security guard's soul. "Apologize genuinely. If you treated her like trash yesterday, today you will treat her like the owner of this company, because starting tomorrow she practically will be." "Yes, sir, understood. Now go, and if Constance Sterling asks, you tell her I'm a wreck, that I'm drinking, that I haven't shown up at the company for 2 days. Understood?" "Yes, sir. You are indisposed." Like a zombie. Exactly. Get out. When Mr. Russo left, Julian picked up the phone and dialed the number he hated most in the world. It rang twice. Julian? Constance's voice answered, syrupy, concerned. Where are you, dear? Glenda said you locked the office. We're worried. I haven't even slept. Julian closed his eyes, channeling his best inner actor. He let his voice crack, sound weak, defeated, pathetic. Constance, I can't take it anymore. It's over for me. What is it, my son? Her tone shifted to instant predatory eagerness, barely disguising her joy. All of this, the company, the memories, that woman's betrayal. Julian let out a convincing, fake sob. You were right. I'm weak. I can't manage this empire without Evelyn. I see her face everywhere. That theft, it was the last straw. I'm broken, Constance. Oh, Julian. Constance was practically purring on the other end of the line. I know, dear. It's too much for you. You need to rest. You need a clinic, perhaps. A retreat in Switzerland, far away. No cell phone. Yes, Switzerland, far from here. Julian took a deep breath. I've decided, Constance. I'm going to resign. I'm going to transfer the chairmanship of the board and the majority control of the shares to you. You are the only one strong enough to protect Arthur's legacy. I am a failure. There was silence on the other end. Julian could almost hear Constance's heart pound with greed. It had been her dream for decades to get the incompetent son-in-law out of the way and take the throne herself. Are you sure, Julian? It's a drastic decision. Irreversible. I am. I've already asked Mr. Keaton to prepare the paperwork. I want to sign everything tomorrow, at the special meeting. I want to do it in front of everyone, so no one can dispute your authority afterward. I want to walk out the front door and never come back. Tomorrow? Her voice trembled with excitement. Of course, dear. Tomorrow is perfect. I'll organize everything. I'll call the press. We'll make it a dignified transition. Thank you, Constance. You always took care of everything. You always solved my problems. Rest, Julian. Take a sedative. Tomorrow all of this will be over. I'll take care of the company. Constance hung up. Julian slowly lowered the phone. The tearful expression vanished from his face instantly, replaced by a mask of icy hatred. Yes, Constance. Tomorrow all of this will be over. But not the way you think. As Julian prepared the guillotine at the top of the tower, night fell once more over Loretta's tenement apartment. The situation had drastically worsened. Toby was burning with fever. The wheezing in his chest was louder, frightening. His old inhaler was empty. Mom, it hurts, Toby moaned. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. Loretta froze. She grabbed the rusty bread knife. Who's there? Mrs. Loretta? Mr. Russo's deep voice. Loretta opened a crack in the door, ready to fight. Mr. Russo was there, in the rain. But he didn't have his arrogant demeanor from before. He was looking down, holding bags and a nice white box. What do you want? Did you come to finish the job? Loretta snarled. Mr. Russo looked at her. And for the first time, Loretta saw shame in that big man's eyes. Loretta, he stammered. I brought this, medicine, food, and this. He handed her the white box. Mr. Sterling sent it. And, Loretta, forgive me, for yesterday. I was an animal. I have a son too, and I shouldn't have done that. Loretta was speechless. She took the items. He knows, she asked. He knows everything now. Mr. Russo handed her an envelope and ran to his car, unable to face the misery he had helped cause. Loretta opened the white box. Inside, protected by tissue paper, was a new uniform, not the grey cleaning one, but a navy blue pantsuit, impeccable, smelling of lavender. The executive assistant uniform and a note. Be ready tomorrow at 9 a.m. A car will pick you up. Wear this uniform. Walk in with your head held high. The war is not over yet. Loretta hugged the clean uniform, smelling the scent of hope. Dawn broke, Judgment Day. At the Sterling estate, Constance Sterling chose her best Chanel dress. She put on pearls, and of course, the diamond ring on her finger. "Today I become queen," she said to the mirror. She arrived at the company, floating. She went up to the boardroom. All the shareholders were there. Julian was at the head of the table. He looked devastated. "Good morning," Constance said, radiant, sitting at the other end. "Shall we begin the transition?" Julian raised his eyes. For a second, the look of defeat vanished. "Yes, let's get this over with." "Where are the documents?" Constance Sterling asked impatiently. "Here." The lawyer pushed the folder. Constance Sterling picked up the gold pen. "Julian, do you want to say a few parting words?" She smiled cruelly. Julian Sterling stood up. He adjusted his suit jacket. He smiled. A wolf's smile. "Actually, Constance Sterling, I do." His voice filled the room. "I want to show everyone the exact reason for my decision." "Grief," she scoffed. "No, a movie. Title, The Snake and the Gold." He pointed the remote at the large screen. "Lights." The blinds lowered. The projector turned on. Constance Sterling felt a sudden wave of nausea. On the screen, the 4K image appeared. The CEO's office. Yesterday. The date and time flickered in the corner of the screen. The room was empty, silent. Constance Sterling looked at Julian Sterling. He stood relentless, his finger hovering over the play button. Constance Sterling's smile froze. She knew what would come next. The trap had been sprung. The CEO's boardroom was plunged into a tactical gloom, lit only by the cold, bluish and accusing light that emanated from the giant 100-inch screen on the main wall. The silence that hung over the massive 20-foot mahogany table was not merely the absence of sound. It was a physical entity, heavy, suffocating, as if all the oxygen had been sucked from the room by a vacuum pump. 20 pairs of eyes, from stern Japanese investors, impatient German advisors, and tie-wearing lawyers who charged by the minute, were fixed on the screen, paralyzed by absolute shock. In the video, played in crystal-clear 4K definition, Constance Sterling's figure moved across the screen. But it was not the elegant matriarch who was sitting at the table with them. It was a furtive figure, moving like a sewer rat dressed in Chanel. The camera, positioned at the perfect angle atop the bookshelf, captured every micro-expression with merciless clarity. The sneer on her face as she opened Julian's private drawer was visible even in the deep wrinkles around her eyes, covered in expensive makeup. But the moment of absolute terror came next. The real-life Julian, standing at the head of the table, looking like a judge in his courtroom, pressed a button on the remote control. The image froze. "Look closely." Julian's voice cut through the darkness, cold as a surgeon's scalpel, devoid of any emotion save for a lethal determination. "Observe the left hand, the ring finger." He pressed play in slow motion. The scene unfolded with painful clarity. Everyone saw the solitaire ring, with its sharp, aggressive diamond hidden beneath the thin leather glove. Everyone saw the hand plunge into the humble fabric bag. Everyone saw the ring snag on the soft gold of the locket as it was pulled out. Everyone saw the abrupt jerk of the bag. And thanks to the room's state-of-the-art surround sound system, designed for global conferences, everyone heard the amplified sound, screech, a sharp, metallic, teeth-grinding sound, the sound of betrayal being physically etched into the gold, the sound of a grandmother desecrating her grandson's memory. Constance Sterling, sitting at the other end of the table, was white, not pale, but white like old candle wax, like a made-up corpse. The crystal water glass trembled violently in her hand until it toppled over, spilling the icy liquid over the stock transfer documents she was about to sign with her gold pen. The ink on the papers began to smudge, just like her future. This is a setup," Sterling shrieked, her shrill voice shattering the silence, sounding like chalk on a blackboard. She sprang to her feet, knocking the $3,000 leather chair backward with a crash. "This is artificial intelligence. It's a deep fake. Julian, how dare you? You hired a special effects studio to defame your son's grandmother in front of the international partners. You've completely lost your mind. Commit this man." Julian did not shout. He simply turned on the room lights with a touch on the panel. The sudden white brightness made Constance blink, momentarily blinded, like a nocturnal animal exposed to the sun. "Artificial intelligence does not scratch gold, Constance," Julian said, with a terrifying calm. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket near his heart and pulled out the locket. He did not hand it over. He threw it. The gold locket slid across the long mahogany table, spinning and making a soft sound of metal against wood, until it stopped precisely in front of Constance. "Look at the back," Julian ordered. "The scratch is there, the same mark, the same depth, the same angle. The signature of your ring. And when forensics analyzes your diamond, Constance, they will find microscopic residues of this gold embedded in it. There is no way to clean it. There is no way to hide it. It is physics. It is irrefutable." Constance looked at the locket on the table as if it were a piece of radioactive uranium. She pulled her hands back, instinctively hiding her diamond ring behind her back. "You scratched it afterward," she accused, pointing a trembling finger from her other hand, her face contorted with hatred. "You forged the evidence to keep the company from me. You're a coward, Julian, a weakling who can't admit that the company is too big for your little depressed mind. You'd rather destroy the family than let go of the reins." The investors began to whisper in various languages. Mr. Nakamura from Japan shook his head in complete disapproval. Constance's lawyer, Mr. Mercer, began to discreetly put his papers into his briefcase, sensing the unmistakable smell of a sinking ship. "Gentlemen!" Constance Sterling turned to the board, her eyes wide, desperate, seeking allies. "Are you going to believe this man? He is unstable. He takes medication. He brought an illiterate cleaner and a street kid into the CEO's office. He turned this place into a circus. I am the only one here who values ethics, tradition, and the bloodline of this family." "Ethics." Julian Sterling laughed. It was a dry, short sound, devoid of any humor. "You talk about ethics. You stole the memory of your own deceased grandson to destroy the life of an innocent mother who had nothing to eat. That's not a lack of ethics, Constance Sterling. That is pure evil. That is sociopathy. She's not innocent. She's trash. A dirty opportunist." Constance Sterling screamed now, losing all composure of a lady of society. Her Botox mask had dropped, revealing the ugly, raw face of class prejudice. "I did what was necessary. Someone had to get that trash out of here, if I had to adjust reality to protect my assets. Then I did it. I am a hero. I saved this company from degradation." The implicit confession hung in the air, heavy as lead. "Adjust reality," Julian Sterling repeated, savoring the words for the record. "That's an interesting euphemism for aggravated theft, slander, defamation, false reporting of a crime, and procedural fraud." "I own all of this." Constance Sterling slammed both hands on the table, hysterical. "You can't touch me. I own 49% of the shares. I'm untouchable. I dine with judges." "There was," Julian corrected gently. "Clause 4. Paragraph 2 of the company bylaws, which your own husband wrote, any partner or director involved in intentional crimes against the company's assets or against the honor of its administrators immediately loses the right to vote and must be compulsorily removed until the final judgment. Mr. Keaton stayed up all night preparing your removal. You don't own anything here anymore, Constance, not even the chair you were sitting in. This is ridiculous. I'm not leaving. Nobody is taking me out of here. I built the walls of this place. You won't be leaving alone, Constance. Julian looked at the double oak door of the room. "I called someone to escort you out, and I called someone to take your place at the table." Julian gave a subtle nod to the head of security, Mr. Russo, who was posted at the door like a statue of remorse and duty. "You may enter." The door opened slowly, but it wasn't the police who entered first. It was Loretta. The sound of her heels on the hardwood floor echoed through the silent room. Tap, tap, tap. A sound of authority. She was not looking down. She was not cowering as if in the rain. She wore the impeccable navy blue pantsuit, perfectly fitted to her body, that Julian had sent. Her shiny black hair was pulled back into an elegant executive bun. Her light makeup enhanced her natural beauty, hiding the dark circles from the night of terror in the tenement apartment, but it did not hide the fire of justice burning in her brown eyes. She walked to the center of the room with the dignity of a queen entering her court. She stopped. She looked at the Japanese investors and performed a respectful and perfect bow, something she had learned by observing Julian in the previous weeks. The Japanese, impressed by her demeanor, returned the bow. Then she turned to Constance Sterling. The contrast was brutal, almost poetic. The wealthy queen was disheveled, sweaty, with mascara smudged, and trembling with hatred. The poor cleaner was standing tall, dignified, clean, and calm. "You!" Constance Sterling hissed, her eyes nearly bulging from their sockets. "What is this hired help doing in here? Security! Mr. Russo, get this woman out of here. Throw her in the trash. Mr. Russo, standing in the doorway, crossed his broad arms over his chest and looked at the ceiling, ignoring Constance Sterling's order for the first time in 20 years of service. "Nobody is taking her out of here, Constance Sterling," Julian Sterling said, walking until he stood beside Loretta. He did not touch her, but their proximity formed an impenetrable barrier of protection. "Loretta is not hired help. Loretta is the victim of your cruelty. And starting today, she's the main witness in the criminal case the district attorney's office is opening against you. Criminal charges." Constance let out a nervous, sharp laugh. "Don't make me laugh, kid. The word of someone from the Ironworks district against mine. I have the best lawyers in the country. I could buy the entire police station if I wanted to. And I have the video." Julian pointed to the big screen, where the frozen image of Constance stealing still glowed. "And I have the ring. And I have the forensic report on the video. And I have 20 international witnesses present here who saw and heard everything." Julian extended his open hand toward her. "The ring, Constance. Take it off. Now." Constance covered her hand with the other. "Never! It's a family heirloom. My grandmother gave it to me. You have no right. If you don't take it off willingly, forensics will remove it at the police station by force to compare it with the scratch on the gold. And it will be much, much more humiliating. They will rip it off your finger in front of the cells." Constance Sterling looked around, seeking salvation. She saw the looks of disgust and disapproval from the investors. She saw the absolute contempt in Julian Sterling's eyes, and then she looked at Loretta and saw the worst thing she could see. Pity. Yes, pity. Loretta looked at her not with hatred, but with the sadness of someone who sees a rotten soul. That was the final blow to Constance Sterling's ego. The cleaner felt pity for her. "I hate you all." Constance Sterling spat the words, venom dripping. "I hate you, Julian Sterling. You betrayed my daughter. You tainted our blood." "Your daughter would be ashamed of you today," Julian Sterling replied, his voice choked but firm. "Evelyn was sweet. Evelyn brought cake for the employees. Evelyn treated everyone with respect. You never deserved the daughter you had. And you don't deserve her memory." At that moment, Mr. Russo fully opened the door. 2 police officers entered, uniformed and armed, accompanied by an FBI special agent in a grey suit. "Constance Sterling," the FBI special agent asked, his grave voice filling the room. He showed his golden badge. "We have an urgent warrant for preventive arrest, search and seizure, and asset freeze, based on the irrefutable digital evidence sent by Julian Sterling and Mr. Keaton last night." "Arrest?" Constance recoiled, hitting her back against the wall, cornered. "No, you don't know who you're talking to. I am Constance Sterling. I know the governor. I'm calling him now." She tried to grab her cell phone from her purse. An officer held her arm. "The governor won't be taking your call today, Constance. He doesn't usually take calls from those accused of corporate fraud and grand larceny. Please, put your hands behind your back." "No, let me go. This is an outrage." The sound of handcuffs clicking shut on Constance's wrists was the loudest sound in the room. Click, clack, the cold metal against skin accustomed to silk and imported creams. The end of impunity. Constance Sterling began to scream, struggling as she was led out by the officers, completely losing her dignity. "This is a mistake. I will sue all of you. Julian, I will destroy you. Loretta, you piece of trash, I will buy your tenement apartment and run a bulldozer over you and that sick brat." Loretta did not back down an inch. As Constance Sterling was dragged past her, foaming with hatred, Loretta looked into her eyes and said only one sentence, low but audible to everyone in the room. "You can tear down my tenement apartment, Constance Sterling. Walls can be rebuilt, but my honor you will never touch again, and my son will never cry because of you again." Constance Sterling was led to the hallway screaming. The company employees, gathered at the glass doors on every floor, watched the Iron Lady, the untouchable, being led away in handcuffs like a common criminal, shouting obscenities, collapsing in real time. The legend of terror was over. The witch's reign had come to an end. In the boardroom, silence returned. But now it was not a suffocating silence. It was a silence of relief, fresh, like the air after a summer storm that clears the pollution. Julian took a deep breath, releasing the air he seemed to have held for 4 years. He turned to the investors. "Gentlemen, I apologize for the regrettable and personal spectacle. The meeting is adjourned. My team will reschedule it for next week. Now, I have a much more important and urgent matter to resolve." The investors, understanding they were witnessing something sacred, stood up. One of the Japanese men, Mr. Nakamura, the oldest and most respected member of the board, walked up to Loretta. He stopped in front of her and performed a deep bow, bending his body as a sign of utmost respect. "My apologies," he said seriously. "I apologize for the injustice. The company asks for forgiveness." Loretta, surprised and moved, returned the bow with grace. When the room finally emptied and the door closed, only Julian and Loretta remained. The large screen had been turned off. The morning sunlight streamed in through the panoramic windows, washing over the room, making the dust particles dance in the light. Julian looked at Loretta. He seemed to have aged 10 years in the last 24 hours, but rejuvenated 20 in the last 5 minutes. He was exhausted, unshaven, but his eyes were clear, bright, free. "Loretta," he began, his voice faltering, taking a step toward her. Loretta raised her hand, asking for silence. She did not smile. The wound was still open. "You doubted me, Julian." She did not scream. She spoke with the calm pain of someone wounded in their soul. "You said your heart was dead. You threw me out in the rain as if I were trash. You let the security guard drag me away." "I know." Julian did not try to justify himself. He did the only thing he could do. He knelt, right there. In the middle of the CEO's office in his Italian suit, the wealthiest man in the building placed both knees on the hard floor. He bowed his head, humble, defeated by his own mistake. "I was a coward, Loretta. I let my old pain blind me to the present. I looked at the locket and forgot to look at the person. I was foolish. I was cruel. I was exactly what Constance wanted me to be, a heartless monster." Loretta looked at that powerful man on his knees at her feet. the man who had saved her son, and then almost destroyed them both with a single word. "Toby asked for you all night," she said, tears starting to fall, warm. "He had a fever, he was delirious, and he kept calling for Uncle Julian. He asked if he had done something wrong for you not to like him anymore." Hearing this, Julian closed his eyes tightly, and a heavy tear rolled down his face, dripping onto the carpet. The thought of Toby blaming himself destroyed him. "I don't deserve Toby, and I don't deserve you. I know that." He took the locket from his pocket, the scratched object, proof of the crime, but also proof of distorted love. "But I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve it if you let me, even if it takes 50 years. He held out the locket to her, his hand trembling. "Keep this, sell it, buy a house for Toby, do whatever you want. But please, don't leave. Stay, work here. Boss me around, yell at me. Just don't leave me alone in this glass tower again. Without you, this is just a luxury coffin." Loretta looked at the gold locket in his hand. Then she looked at Julian's face, bathed in tears and hope. She saw the brutal sincerity in his eyes. She saw the visceral regret, and she saw the lonely man who ate pizza with his hand, got his chin messy, and taught his son how to tie his shoes. She sighed, a trembling sound. She slowly knelt down to his level, eye to eye. "I don't want your gold, Julian. I never wanted your money." She closed his hand over the locket, pushing it back to his chest. "I just wanted you to believe in me. For you to trust what we were building. I do believe. I swear. I believe in you more than I believe in myself, more than anything." Loretta touched his face with her palm. His stubble lightly grazed her skin, a real human sensation. "Get up, Julian," she said softly. "The floor is no place for you. And Toby is waiting for his uncle. He has a fever and needs a father's hug. And I think we have a belated birthday to celebrate properly, with a whole cake this time." Julian held her hand and kissed it. He pressed his lips into her palm and stayed there for a moment, breathing in her scent. It wasn't a dramatic kiss from a soap opera, it was a kiss of devotion, like someone kissing a saint who had just performed a miracle. "Let's go get our boy," he whispered, getting up and helping her to her feet. The scene in the ironworks district an hour later stopped the entire neighborhood. The black armored CEO's car, shining under the sun that had finally come out, parked in front of the dilapidated wooden tenement apartment. The neighbors came out to their windows, curious. Mr. Skaggs, the owner of the tenement apartment, appeared, running and sweating, thinking it was the police coming to arrest Loretta for good. Julian got out of the car. He didn't care about the mud on his Italian leather shoes. He stepped into the mud with relish. He opened the back door for Loretta to step out like the lady she was. When Mrs. Patty appeared at the door of the tenement apartment with Toby in her arms, the boy, still a bit weak from the fever but already medicated, broke into a gummy smile that lit up the dirty street more than the sun. "Uncle Julian!" His cry was weak but full of joy. Julian ran. He didn't walk, he ran. He scooped the boy into his arms, taking him from his neighbor's lap. Toby hugged his neck tightly, burying his face in his shoulder, smelling expensive cologne and security. "I knew you'd come," Toby said, his voice muffled against the suit. "Mom said you were busy saving the world from monsters, but I knew you'd come to see me." Julian squeezed the boy against his chest, tears wetting the Spider-Man shirt. The lump in his throat dissolved. "I was saving my world, Toby. And my world is you and your mom. Sorry I took so long, champ. Your uncle will never be late again. Never again." Loretta watched the scene, leaning against the luxurious car, crying and smiling at the same time, feeling the weight of the world lift from her shoulders. Mr. Russo, the giant security guard who was driving the car, leaned against the wall, sniffling loudly and pretending he had something in his eye so he wouldn't cry in front of his boss. Julian looked at Loretta over Toby's shoulder. "Let's go home," he said. "This isn't your home anymore." It never will be again. And where are we going, Uncle? Toby asked, pulling his face away to look at him. Home, Julian said, smiling. To a big house, with your own toy room, with a yard for you to run in, with a dog if you want one, and with pizza every Friday. What do you think? And cake, Toby asked seriously, remembering the trauma. And cake, every day if you want, as big as you want. Julian placed Toby on the ground but held his hand firmly. With his other hand, he held Loretta's, intertwining their fingers. The three walked to the car. The stick figure family from the drawing had gained flesh, bone, heart, and a future. The garden of the Sterling estate was unrecognizable. Where before there had only been geometrically trimmed grass and cold marble statues, now there was chaos and life. A giant, colorful, inflatable castle, a huge ball pit, and 50 children running, shouting and laughing. It was Toby's 7th birthday. But that wasn't all. The reason for the party was twofold. In the center of the garden, beneath an arch of white flowers and lilies, a justice of the peace smiled, holding a book. Julian was at the makeshift altar. He no longer looked like the somber, ghostly CEO from a year ago. He was lightly tanned, smiling, wearing a light linen suit without a tie. He looked alive. The music began. Not the traditional pompous wedding march, but a soft instrumental violin version of Toby's favorite song. Loretta entered. She was not wearing traditional bridal white. She wore a light blue dress, the color of a summer sky, simple, flowing, and elegant. She was radiant. There were no longer any traces of the tired and humiliated cleaner. There was only a woman loved, secure, and powerful in her kindness. Toby entered in front of her, carrying the wedding rings on a blue velvet cushion. He was strong, healthy, with rosy cheeks, his asthma controlled, running towards the altar with inexhaustible energy. "Dad, the ring is here! I made it!" he shouted, breaking all ceremonial protocol. The guests laughed, delighted. Julian bent down and took the cushion from the boy's hands. "Thank you, son. Good job." When Loretta reached the altar, Julian held her hands, looking deep into the brown eyes that had saved him. "I promised to protect you that day, in the rain," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, unashamed of his love. "But the truth is, you saved me. You cleansed the dirt from my soul, Loretta. You and Toby gave me a reason to wake up." "And you taught me that I can be a queen without losing humility," she replied, smiling with tears in her eyes. "And you gave me a family when I thought I was alone in the world." They exchanged gold wedding bands. The kiss was met with a standing ovation, shouts and whistles of joy. Constance Sterling was not there to see it. She watched the news of the wedding of the year on the small TV in the recreation room of a medium-security special correctional institution where she was serving an 8-year sentence for fraud, embezzlement and grand larceny. She turned off the TV, bitter, alone, surrounded by iron bars, while the celebration continued freely under the sun. At the party, during the birthday celebration, Toby climbed onto a chair to reach the table. The cake was giant, 3-tiered, chocolate with strawberry and extra frosting, and on top, instead of traditional bride and groom figures, there were 3 personalized fondant figurines, a man, a woman, and a boy holding hands, and a candle with the number 7. "Dad, make a wish!" Toby shouted before blowing. Julian looked at Loretta, his wife. He looked at Toby, his son officially recognized on paper and in his heart. He looked at the cloudless blue sky. He put his hand in his pants pocket. The old gold locket was still there. The deep scratch on the back was still there. And he never had it polished or repaired. He wanted to keep the scar, to always remember that gold can scratch, that life can wound, but that true love is unbreakable. "I don't need to wish for anything, son," Julian said, pulling both of them into a tight bear hug. "My wish has already come true. I already have everything." They blew out the candle together. The light smoke rose, carrying away the last ghosts of the past, leaving in the air only the sweet scent of chocolate, laughter, and an eternal new beginning. Did you like this story? Do you think Loretta deserved what she went through? Let me know in the comments. Until the next story.